Pagitt Radio on AM 950.
We're spinning wax here at KTNF.
So I think religion's going to be a really big deal in our political news because you're either going to end up with Mitt Romney, who's a Mormon, and I have mentioned before that there's no way your card-carrying, typical conservative evangelicals in any regional expression around the United States is going to have a high enthusiasm factor for pastors standing up in their pulpits and saying, in the United States, God wants us to have a Christian leader, and we should pick a Muslim. We should pick a Mormon. They're going to have a very difficult time doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's going to become a news story. No one in the news wants to talk about it right now. I was watching a news program today with Chris Matthews.
The Mormon question?
The Mormon question. And it came up a little bit, and then Chris Matthews basically said, I don't want to inject that into the conversation. If people have a problem with it, we'll report on it. But I think we have to be careful not to be the ones, it is so hovering below the surface.
Well, how fast and loose is Chris Matthews being?
Well, the media doesn't want to be the one who, anybody in the media doesn't want to be the one for whom they can point and say, oh, this wasn't even an issue until they made it an issue. But I'm telling you, I know evangelicals. I know them personally. A lot of them, I know them well. And they're never going to be able to stand up with the kind of gusto that you would need to really give support. So it's going to become a big, There's
just too much crow that they would have to eat in order to do that.
Yeah.
Because they've been preaching all along, Jesus is the only way. Mormons are a cult. So, they would have to totally flip on that.
Yes.
And, that's like universal among fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah. It's very common. And so that's going to it's going to become an issue. So there's going to be a religious question around Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same religious question that there was around Jack Kennedy. Here's why. Jack Kennedy was a Catholic, and it was a big question for Protestants if they could vote for a Catholic. Here's why it's different. Because in the current media, social media, and broadcast media environments, the conversation is not controlled the way that it was in the early 1960s. People may have been worried about it, but you could give a single answer and deal with it. What we've now gotten to, and not to give everybody a little, Republican strategy history lessons, but Nixon's Southern strategy, which was to try to get Southern Democrats to vote for him in the early 1970s as somebody who really represented their religious convictions, changed the ballgame, where now religion is used as a organizing entity for people to distribute their political candidates of choice.
Well, the religious right would love to have a Catholic candidate to support right now.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
They are coming around guys like Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich, who are Catholics.
I did not know Santorum was a Catholic.
That's
he speaks Baptist better than anybody.
But that's where his pro-Catholic, his pro-family and pro-life
Well,
issues.
because he's more pro-life than most the fundamentalists are.
Yep. So his approach, he is one of those conservative, sort of one of those Mel Gibson Catholics. So that's an interesting split, but they're going to have a very hard time there. So what I think is going to happen is that evangelicals are either going to, and conservative other fundamentalists are either going to stay home, or there's going to be a legitimate third-party candidate that they can get around. However you slice it, religion's going to become a big deal because of Mitt Romney.
So they call Mitt Romney a Massachusetts moderate.
Yes,
and Santorum a Mel Gibson Catholic.
and and Rick Santorum is continuing to inject religion into it. Now, this morning, I don't know, Will, if you're able to find that clip or not, because I can recount it. This morning on the most current debate, this is on January 8th, 2012, Rick Santorum was asked by David Gregory during the debate. David Gregory asked the question that I've been begging for somebody to ask these guys for a long time. He said this: look, we've dealt with the Soviet Union having nuclear weapons. We've dealt with North Korea having nuclear weapons. Why is it that you say there's no possible way we could ever stand for Iran to have nuclear weapons? Right? We know Israel has them. We know that foes and frenemies have them.
Pakistan, right.
Right. He even asked about Pakistan after this. He says, so why do you say it's absolutely impossible? We can never, ever, ever let Iran have them. And Rick Santorum's straight-on answer was, they're a theocracy. Here's his answer. They're a theocracy that believes that the afterlife is better than this life, so they have nothing to lose. Okay, now, a lot of Christians that have voted for you in Iowa think the very same thing.
Yeah.
His argument is you cannot let religious people who believe that the afterlife is better than this life and want to use their religious ideas as the structure of their government to have nuclear weapons. I mean, I'm just going
Thus
out of my mind.
disqualifying himself as president.
As being a president, right? I mean, the guy is a walking, he's not a flip-flopper.
No, he's a true believer.
He's an inconsistenter. He's incontinent. He's inconsistent. He doesn't, it's just wild, right? Like, we should bomb another country nuclear program because they have a religious the religious guy says the religious people can't have them. And then so David Gregory said, well, what about Pakistan? Pakistan got a nuclear weapon. And he said, well, because we're working toward there being a secular government there, so that's fine. So what Rick Santorum has said is we should attack as a nation other religious nations that have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
He has now inserted a religious rationale, not that we are religious, but that they are. That, okay, first of all, could this guy's 10 minutes be over fast enough of attention around this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gaspable. When that clip is finally available, we'll put it up. And you can find this all over. Here's the thing about Rick Santorum. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's actually probably I just think his ideas are really bizarre. What his idea represents to people in South Carolina, who I think are going to vote for him, represented to people in Iowa, is, no, we want there to be this religious narrative that explains why we're not going to bomb North Korea and why we're not going to bomb Pakistan, but we are going to bomb Iran. And his answer is, well, because of the religious issues there. See, because they're really hyper religious people. So we have to control hyper religious people by using our military to not allow them to do. Okay, so what it's done now is it's introduced a religious rationale between that conversation, which is not going to go away, right? It's going to stick around for 6, 8, 9 months, and it's going to keep coming up. It's because if Mitt Romney asks for Rick Santorum's endorsement, then it's going to come with that package. If Mitt Romney feels like I've got to shore up with my religious conservatives, so I'm going to pick Rick Santorum, it's going to include it. If he picks anybody who's got that vibe to it, now you're going to have religious people saying Mitt Romney's the wrong kind of religious person, and you're going to have religiously committed people trying to say we think that there should be a religious impetus for. So religion's going to be a very big deal in this election. Not because people are trying to cater to the evangelical vote alone. I mean, that's been a big deal since 1976 when Jimmy Carter won the presidency and Time magazine declared 1976 to be the year of the evangelical. Yeah. So it's been going on for a long time. Democrats and Republicans. Just currently in our current mix, it's Republicans that have their finger on the evangelical pulse, and so they're speaking that language where previously it was Jimmy Carter who spoke that kind of language. But religion is going to be a dominant theme, and I think that we have to have better ways of acknowledging, talking about, and understanding. And I hope that what we end up coming out of the year of religious scrutiny that's going to go on. And religious conversations is that we would understand that all religions are true.
Well, hey, I like
see, that was a play in the last.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, two of you.
I like a guy who stands up for what he believes in. A person of and I think that and this has been the big problem in Christianity is a lot of people claiming this Christian faith but not exhibiting any of it. So it's great to see this guy, this politician, standing for what he believes in.
Right.
But the office that he is applying for, requires, a leader that defends the Constitution, not the Bible. And this person has to represent,
all the peoples.
All the people, And if you cannot mesh those two, then you have to recuse yourself from the competition.
Right.
That my faith does not allow me, to make the compromises that are necessary, to be a leader of the United States.
Because I have a different set of commitments.
Right.
Yeah, and this was the big question for John Kennedy, right? The people's fear was,
sure,
well, if the Pope blows the whistle and tries to call all Catholics into alignment, does your commitment to your Catholicism vis-a-vis the Pope, does that trump your commitment? And he basically said, nope.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and answer that. The problem with the Rick Santorum type and these kinds of religious people is they say, my religious commitments are my principles that I will not that I will not waver on.
Yeah.
It is the fact that he sees that not as his cultural religious understanding that then pushes him to another kind of commitment. He sees it as the very commitments.
I feel like the thing that's most hypocritical about Rick Santorum is he would not hesitate to pull America into a Christian theocracy given the opportunity. I really believe that about him in particular, yeah. And I mean, for him to insult, I feel like it was more based on Muslim theocracy is what he should have said. That's what he meant in his own head.
Interesting. Yeah.
The thing for me is that I think what Christians make a mistake, religious people make a mistake, is that if a person is religious, that makes them qualified to just because Rick Santorum is a very religious person, that makes him no more qualified to lead a country. That's not the gravitas that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a good leader, not the most religious guy in the group.
Yeah, and I think both of you are bringing up important points, because when someone says, well, how you know what my principles are that I won't compromise on is by looking at my religious commitments, I think that's a fatal flaw. I think what it should be is my religious commitments help me to form principles in this job.
Yeah.
But they're not the same.
Yeah.
They should say, I have gotten to the same principles that you have, voter. I got there because of my religious teaching, my religious understanding, my religious experience. You may have gotten there some other way.
Yeah.
That's a fair explanation, right? Like, well, this is why I think that's important. This is why I think that that's meaningful. And now we've agreed on those principles. When someone takes their religious commitments and say, well, those are the principles that I will hold to.
Yeah.
That's where I think you've become, maybe that's what you're saying, well, that's where you become a theocracy. That's where you've begun to say that that's what's happening. Well, it's going to be, and all I'm bringing up here for this segment is we have to be better at learning how to talk about religion in this country. And it's going to show the cracks and the weaknesses in our ability to know how to talk about this, which makes this radio show indispensable for democracy's existence itself.
Right.
Like all the Republican candidates. If you don't listen here, then everything we've ever longed for 238 years is going to collapse.
Yeah.
Vote right with your radio dial. Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950 and DougPagittRadio.com.